Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Detective Comics 2022 Annual. This is from DC Comics, obviously in 2022. It was written by Ram V, art by Christopher Mitten and Rafael Albuqerque with Hayden Sherman. Lee Loughridge was the colorist, Deron Bennett letterer, Evan Cagle was the cover artist, Ariana Totoro was the senior associate editor, edited by Jessica Chen, Ben Abernathy group editor. The narrative is bookended by somebody in the current day explaining something that happened in the past. That's these two people going through the ruins of Arkham Asylum, and they are trying to recover this device, which looks like just a rock inside of a jar. And then we jump to the past with the Gathome settlement of 1776, where a mysterious murder of Tim and Moira Wainwright has created some problems. Now, the only survivor of this attack was a young boy, and the boy is being attended to by a friend of Tim Wainwright known as Aldridge Pearce. Pearce was a friend of Tim's that they knew each other and fought side by side in Lexington, but that kind of confuses the timeline a little bit since the Battle of Lexington happened in 1775, and they say this guy's been in town as a drifter since 2 years ago, which would be 1774, so that timeline doesn't quite make any sense. Anyway, they also say the war's winding down, even though that isn't really the case in 1776, but I guess Gotham is far enough removed from the war somehow, and it is largely a shepherd town at this point, and it's about to become a booming metropolis, and other people do know that, including a guy named Argram. Nathaniel Argram is in town with his manservant and some attendants, it appears, and they are up to some no-good shenanigans. We also have Ichabod Crane, spelled with a K, not the guy from the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. There's also a woman on the edge of town that's being called a witch, and she is being blamed on the deaths, even though the witness described this like giant wolf creature, which is never seen again. It's referenced that he killed the Waynes, but we never see it again. Don't even bother thinking about that. Well, Pierce manages to help out this healer lady that's being accused of being a witch. She's very much a Poison Ivy pastiche. We also have a couple other characters that are sort of allusions to Batman's Rogues Gallery, but Pierce is going to flee town with the Wainwright boy to take him out of there and away from the troubles of the past, but he's convinced to stay by a coachman named Mordecai, and this sets him on a confrontation with the locals while he is disguised in a tricorner hat and cloak and a mask, very much the symbol of a bat. And it turns out that the people in this era were trying to bury the device under the church, which would later become the foundation for Arkham Asylum, which I don't know if they're retconning that so far back that the manor house that was Arkham is being erased from history or not, because I don't remember the Wainwrights having changed the name. Anyway, it turns out that what they're doing is accidentally setting in motion a cycle of basically Batmen over the generations, and it's a pretty interesting idea, and it looks like there's a lot of supernatural elements at play here, but this is really just a lead-in to Detective Comics 1067. This seems to be the prelude for a story arc that I didn't know about, or I wouldn't have picked it up if it was just going to be the lead-in to a storyline. But for $6, it's a little overpriced. The story's not bad, but this should have been a 4-part miniseries. Maybe within Detective Comics as the storyline that leads into a different storyline, because this is just too rushed. I thought it was good for what it is and the length it is, but it was definitely too rushed. There's a lot of plot threads that really aren't tied together, that aren't explained well enough, that should have been. We never see the Wolfman creature again, so I don't even understand what the point of that was. There's a guy with a scarred face, very similar to Two-Face, that is shown but really never mentioned again. A lot of the dynamics in the storyline would have been much more interesting had they been developed a little further. So while I didn't hate the story, it just wasn't as thought out and developed as it should have been. It's a good story for an annual, but not at $6 because it does seem incomplete. I'm not a giant fan of the art style either. For the most part, it works okay, but it's a little too cartoonish at times, and there is a little bit of political messaging in there, but it's not nearly as heavy-handed as most comics. Overall, I thought it was okay. If you find it for $3 or $4, then I would recommend it, especially if you're going to read the storyline that it's leading into in Detective 1067. But if you're just thinking about picking this up out of a back issue bin for cover price or higher, don't bother. It's not really worth it. It's a decent story, but it's better told in a trade paperback with the actual story that it's going with, because there are a lot of inconsistencies and missing elements in the book that probably should have been there to better explain the characters. And I think that only could have been done if it had had more space to evolve as a story. A 4-issue story arc would have been great for this, this. It could have focused more on the murders and solving those instead of this rushed narrative that you end up getting where they're trying to jam in all these characters that really weren't necessary. Or even the peripheral characters were a little too explained when they basically disappear halfway through the book. There's a lot of dangling plot threads that could have been stitched together in a longer narrative. I do like the cover, but it's too dark, and they need to lighten up the face area a little bit so you can see his face better, because otherwise it looks like a darkened photocopy. So I'm only going to recommend this if you can find it for about $4 or less. Then I would say check it out if you're interested in a flashback to the colonial era and them minimizing Batman's role yet again as a unique superhero, because it's not even Bruce Wayne in the costume, it's a totally random guy. But it was well told, I just had some issues with it. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links from the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.